Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise to make a ministerial statement to this August House on the government's rural electrification program from 2015 to date. And I wish to thank for your generosity in allowing me to speak, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, while we in the urban centres enjoy the comforts of having electricity, this government, the Fiji First government, is committed to extend the same to those in the rural areas. In this regard, government through the Rural Electrification Program has implemented projects under the following areas. 1. FEA grid extension and house wiring. 2. Rural government station grid extension and house wiring. 3. Diesel schemes. 4. Minor house wiring. 5. Renewable energy, which includes solar, hydro and hybrid systems. Madam Speaker, the Rural Electrification Program undertaken by the Fiji First government covers all these areas. This program is to connect our rural communities who are close to the FEA grid. Secondly, we have the solar home system program for those who fall outside the grid. Madam Speaker, on this point, let me add that it is encouraging to note that many residents within the grid have also expressed their preference for solar-powered electricity. Madam Speaker, spreading our electricity grid at an accelerated pace to make up for the years of neglect in this area since independence is no easy task. We all know of this neglect of our rural communities under successive government since 1970. The story that best expresses this neglect is that despite the much publicized benefits of the Monosavu hydro scheme, the immediate villages and residents in and around the project were without electricity for generations. That is until, Madam Speaker, the Beni Marama government provided electricity for them. We have taken it upon ourselves as we approach the 50th year of Fiji's independence in 2020 to provide the gift of light to all Fijians. Madam Speaker, this is no easy task, but if we don't set ourselves such targets, we will not achieve anything. Madam Speaker, we will turn to more sustainable energy sources to meet this commitment, such as harvesting energy from solar, hybrid, wind and water. And given the advance in technology, Madam Speaker, we will be expending greater energy in looking at options in these areas for both the rural electrification and solar home system programs. Madam Speaker, electricity is no longer a luxury but a need. It impacts on all aspects of our lives. And those who in the past were neglected and deprived of this energy of light to light up their lives, we are now having their needs addressed. We have greatly eased the financial burden by removing the deposit requirement from each household for the program. And in our effort for equitable rollout of the program, we do not believe in the size of the program, Madam Speaker, and I will give you an example. It was a very emotional occasion for us in Ba last Saturday when I commissioned the rural electrification program for the people in Nasolo. It's a very small community, settlement of 12 households, and we took this program there, irrespective of the size and location. The residents there were grateful for the rollout as they had been in the past denied electricity, only because the powers that in those times deemed that they were too small a community to come under this program. And Madam Speaker, I want to say this, that they were in tears when this program was. You may laugh, you can laugh, no problem. But I tell you, it was an emotional and tears were there, and as soon as it was commissioned, you can see the smiles on the small kids. Madam Speaker, I was also privileged to be part of the Northern Tour a fortnight ago with my fellow ministerial colleagues, with our Honourable Prime Minister. Wherever we went, the people came out in numbers, especially the Konrove, to thank the Fiji Affairs government for their development achievements, and in particular for bringing electricity in their lives. That will no doubt be a game changer for them. Madam Speaker, their children will have light for their education. Madam Speaker, electricity access is a key driver for productivity, especially given the push for greater population in the agriculture sector. Madam Speaker, the Honourable Prime Minister and my fellow ministers were humbled by their gratitude and moved by the fact that each school we went to in the north, the children sang the national anthem in our three major languages, irrespective of their racial background. As we light up their lives through the electricity rollout program, Madam Speaker, under both REP and SHS, they lit up our lives by showing pride in our nation and its achievement under the Bainimarama government. Madam Speaker, it is in this context of bringing electricity into the lives of once deprived communities that I highlight to this August House the achievements of rural electrification program as follows. 1. FEA grid extension and house wiring. Madam Speaker, in 2015, a total of 1,109 rural households, that is equivalent to 5,545 persons, were connected to FEA power network in the central, western and northern divisions. For the period of 2016 to 2017, a total of 51 rural electrification projects were commissioned and completed, providing power connection to 692 homes, and in terms of persons, it is around 3,460 in the rural and remote communities in Fiji. They didn't have electricity, Madam Speaker. I'm just talking about 2015. And here we have honorable members telling us that you people went there and promised in 2014. But I want to ask them, and this is what I said yesterday, what about all these governments, the political leaders, those who have been residing there for 100 years, 80 years, where were they? They can laugh, let them laugh, people are watching, hearing about them, and they're waiting for them in those respective areas. Madam Speaker, Ministry through the Fiji Electricity Authority will continue with the rural electrification program in 2017. Madam Speaker, the Department of Energy will also continue works in the provision of electricity services to the remote and rural areas. In doing its major achievements for 2016, Madam Speaker, to date includes the house wiring and connection to FEA grid for a total of 1,406 houses, and in terms of persons, it's around 7,030 with a total budget of around 2.3 million. Madam Speaker, the breakdown of 1,406 as per divisions are as follows. Central Eastern Division 517, Western Division 467, and Northern Division 42. 2, Madam Speaker, rural government station grid extension and house wiring. Madam Speaker, Ministry through the Department of Works continues to supply power to the government stations with a total of 143 households, and in terms of persons it's 715 and 16 classroom blocks benefiting during the 2015 to 2017 period, with a total cost of $900,000. In doing so, Madam Speaker, we were able to bring light to 640 students, including 340 boarders. They didn't have these facilities, Madam Speaker, before 2015. Diesel scheme. Madam Speaker, government continues to provide technical assistance to communities with around 400 operational diesel schemes. We intend to introduce hybrid system to these same communities. In this regard, the integrating of these existing diesel schemes, Madam Speaker, and its reticulation system with a large solar system will increase hours of electricity supply with very minimum use of diesel. Among renewable and alternative energy programs, Madam Speaker, solar home system is an important scheme which takes electricity in a sustainable manner to those who are remote from the existing electricity grid. Madam Speaker, there is a lot of potential in this scheme as we commit to a greener and smarter Fiji in respect of its carbon footprint. As international ambassadors for climate change, Madam Speaker, Fiji, under the leadership of the Honourable Prime Minister, is heading and hosting the COP23 later this year in November. Every small reduction we make to our carbon footprint is an important step towards mitigation against global warming and climate change, which greatly impacts on smaller island nations in the Pacific. And the SHS program is one such contributor to a reduced carbon footprint in Fiji. 4, Madam Speaker, renewable energy, which includes solar, hydro, and hybrid systems. Madam Speaker, a total of 3,200 solar home systems that were rolled over from 2015 to 2016, an additional 500 solar homes now is part of the 2016-2017 work program. This, Madam Speaker, brings our solar home system program to a total of 3,700 in terms of persons, Madam Speaker. It will be around 18,500. You can imagine, Madam Speaker, it's huge. These poor people in our communities, in remote areas, were without these facilities. Madam Speaker, the total cost of this project is around 12.8 million. Furthermore, Madam Speaker, another 600 solar home system will be reinstalled for the houses that were damaged. Someone raised from that end about the damages during the cyclone Winston. Furthermore, Madam Speaker, another 600 solar home system will be reinstalled for the houses that were damaged during the TC Winston. Government has already called the tender for the supply of the equipment. Madam Speaker, under Renewable and Sustainable Rural Electrification Program, we also have the following programs. Mini hydro. Madam Speaker, during the 2015-2017 period, 3 hydro projects were recommissioned in the Northern, Eastern and Western Division to a total cost of 2.2 million, benefiting 501 households. Madam Speaker, Somsomo Hydro was a new major project in the Rural Electrification Program, benefiting 400 homes, schools and businesses, including the government station. Madam Speaker, further connection will take place in the settlements and villages by the end of first quarter next year. Madam Speaker, government contributed 7.5 million for this project. Hybrid system. Madam Speaker, in terms of producing electricity through hybrid system, a total of 183 households have benefited from the 3 locations in the 2 divisions, namely Eastern, Northern, to be a total cost of 4.9 million. Madam Speaker, the additional benefits of this hybrid system is that they have capability to supply electricity 24/7, save on fuel consumption, and environmentally friendly. Madam Speaker, there has been a degree of slowdown in our rollout, and unfortunately, we have had no favors from the weather. Post-TC Winston recovery priority and the long and wet season and are currently in has impacted on the projections we had in place. Nevertheless, Madam Speaker, we have moved on, and as we look forward to a cooler, drier, cyclone-free months ahead, we have in place plans to make up for the lost time and achieve the projected projects come end of 2017. Madam Speaker, as outlined earlier in my address to this August House, the Rural Electrification Program and the Solar Home System, among other alternative and renewable energy initiatives, are major drivers of taking electricity to our people. We cannot afford to keep any Fijians in dark. I have no illusion about the path forward providing electricity like any other utility and infrastructure program, requires time to explore best options and allow for a time to use best practice in its implementation. Madam Speaker, as I also emphasized earlier, this is not a task to be left on a drawing board. The accelerated implementation of the two programs, REP and SHS, has only happened because of the vision and commitment of this government, the Fiji First government, to provide this basic need as many Fijians as possible in the shortest period of time. There are no ifs and buts about it, Madam Speaker. The general wellness of all Fijians and important drivers like education and productivity are tied in providing this energy source to all Fijians. And under these twin programs, we have the structure to which we have added flexibility to make great strides in meeting our stated aims of power to all, Madam Speaker, put by our Honourable Prime Minister in respect of providing electricity for all Fijians. Madam Speaker, on this note, I conclude my statement by reiterating that the Fiji First government is focused on the service delivery, and we will reach out to all those who do not have access of electricity. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. And I'll call on the Leader of Opposition or her designate to speak in response.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I thank the Honourable Minister for the very comprehensive update on the rural electrification works carried out by government through Fiji Electricity Authority, Department of Energy and the contractors. And to say that electricity is a basic commodity is an understatement. We all know that in this modern era of technology, irrespective of where one lives, electricity becomes a lifeline upon which communities can bring themselves up to par with the rest of the world. I applaud all the work been carried out by the Ministry for the Rural Electrification and thank the Minister for his oversight of these works. Let me say, as my response, Madam Speaker, that more could have been achieved. More remains to be done. Many homes still await the provision of electricity despite having been on the waiting list with the Rural Electrification Department since 2007. You can correct me on this, Honourable Speaker. Madam Speaker, let me suggest to the Honourable Minister, who has all the habit of saying that people have been waiting without infrastructure since the 1970s, to grasp the basic fact that the Fiji First government has been running this country now for 11 long years. That makes them second longest running government after the Alliance government. And therefore they have more than enough time to carry out their work and stop shuffling the blame to others like little children. Madam Speaker, our villages and settlements in Rolemba settlement, Waisa, Nabutu, Naterumai, Nangarebi, Botundabila, they're still waiting for their electricity connection. Nairebrevnidangi, Sasawira and Virasi settlement. Roma village, Madam Speaker, they have requested and was promised to have solar by the Prime Minister's office 2 years ago, but today it remains a dream for them. Madam Speaker, let me just say that the report by the Honourable Minister today is flawed, because in some areas the provision of power supply simply does not make sense. I say this because of some instances, electricity grid was constructed to cater for certain areas. Like in Tailib North, electricity was connected up to Wailotua village, and then start again in Ayabu. In between the villages of Malambi, Sautoka, Nabedo Batu, Nambuva, Naimbita, Wali, up to Tombo village. They're still waiting for the electricity connection. They were promised to have electricity connection by Christmas 2014 by the former Minister for Works, Mr. Pio Tekundundua. To date, all these villages patiently awaiting connections. Similar sentiments were raised from the villages of Mataso Inra, Batinikia in Serua, Tikina Waini Korolua, and Tikina Nangarwa in Namosi, Waiwosu village and Nasivikoso in Namosa. For solar, Madam Speaker, I'd just like to give the Honourable Minister one example. In Vunisea Kandavu, government installed a new solar energy power station in Vunisea. However, this is not fully operational, and the villages of Namalata, Namuana, Welevu, Mokoisa, and Tabuki, as originally planned, is yet to receive the supply of electricity. Madam Speaker, in Honolulu, the Nambuwalu Hybrid Power Project was first initiated in 1995 to include utilization of wind and solar energy with diesel generators as backup to the system. The system was established with a view to demonstrate the applicability of wind, solar, diesel generator hybrid system for remote power areas. The system was to provide power to the whole of Nambuwalu Government Station and Nambuwalu Village. I am made to understand, Madam Speaker, that to date power is still provided to the people of Nambuwalu on an intermittent supply from 4 a.m. to 12 midday, then from 2 p.m. to 11 p.m. daily. In fact, Madam Speaker, last week there was no power supply from Friday 10th to the 17th of March. Government officers in Nambuwalu had to rely on the generator power from the PA's office. Imagine then the villagers and the school children, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, let me now highlight some challenges faced by the current rural electrification consumers. In some Rewa River Delta villages, power poles are tilting dangerously due to rotting and corroded crossarms which sit on power lines. Crossarms lifespan is 10 years, and yet most crossarms are now over 20 years plus on those power poles in Rewa. Crossarms, Madam Speaker, needed to be maintained at a certain height because they carry the conductor, which supports the insulator enabling power supply through. As therefore, what are the government plans for 2017 for the renewing of these crossarms on power poles, Madam Speaker? I hope government realizes that it is accident awaiting to happen in villages and pedestrians. Also to the black wire lines, Madam Speaker, I had earlier requested government assistance on this matter, following disasters like Tropical Cyclone Winston, and struggling villages are asked to reinstall them at their own cost, as advised by FEA. Madam Speaker, I suggest government stop hoodwinking people and takes a real hard look at itself. When they decide to reduce consumers' contribution from 10% to 5% in 2008, and now refund all deposits without any interest earned. The government introduced government subsidies to consumers. Consumers may have benefited, but government may have taken more than they can chew. As a result, they are now looking to divesting shares of FEA in order for the entity to be a truly independent and viable commercial entity in the long run. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You really gained, because I thought that was the first bell. Sorry. Thank you. I now call on the leader of the NFP or his designate.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I share the sentiments of the honourable member before me. I think this government would do better, Madam Speaker, if they stop berating past governments and parliaments and look at what they've done over the last 11 years. If they've done something good, don't come and brag here. Just do it. That's your job. Don't come and brag here about a little community that you've helped. That's your job. You're supposed to do that. But let me just come back to this idea of. I think the minister went to 1970s and 80s, Madam Speaker. Let me just give him some examples of why he's so wrong. For installed generation capacity, Madam Speaker, today is roughly about 237 megawatts, comprising of 80 megawatts from the Monosabo Hydro Scheme and 40 megawatts Nandarewatu Hydro Scheme in Vitilevu, and about 112 megawatts of diesel capacity in 14 stations around the country. But that 80 megawatts, the hydro scheme, when was that conceived? In the late 70s, completed in the early 80s, by then government, by then parliament. Of course, Madam Speaker, not everything could have been done in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and we acknowledge what this government is doing in terms of extending some of the infrastructure projects. But for them to come and keep bragging here, keep berating the leaders of the past, leaders of the parliament, I mean, it makes no sense, Madam Speaker. It makes no sense. I mean, they spend some time thinking about seriously where the pitfalls are, what needs to be done. I'll give you an example, another example, Madam Speaker. In my area, if you go from Sianganga, go right up to Duketi, they put these poles and power lines, and they're supposed to go from one settlement to another. And lo and behold, they left one settlement. And when I went there, I found out that they were all my close relatives. But they still haven't got it. I don't know why it was not done. But if you're going from this end to the other end, Madam Speaker, you would have that completed. And I've raised this with the Minister. But so these are the examples, and Honourable Ranruno actually talked about areas where things need to be done. So we needed the Honourable Minister to come out here and say, look, we've done things here, that's fine, these are areas that needs to be done. This is the kind of thing we need, not talking about, somebody who didn't have power in the 70s. Of course, a lot of people didn't have power in the 70s, in the 80s. No, I mean, basically, it's become a habit, Madam Speaker, of ministers on the other side to rubbish everything that was done in the past. And I take exception to that because our party's leaders were sitting in this parliament and other parliament. And many of them contributed towards the development of this country over the last 30 or 40 years. So let's get real, Let's talk about what we did in the last 11 years. And then talk about what needs to be done. Because for the first 7 years, there was no opposition. You people were in government, some of you. So, you need to understand that. So let's talk about the last 11 years instead of the last 30 or 40 years, Madam Speaker. Coming back to, of course, Madam Speaker, some people would be very grateful, and I will say this to the ministers who go there. But don't come and brag about it here and talk about how they were crying, how they were, thanking you, This is the kind of bragging that they do. And then when they get told that there are so many areas in the country where there is no power, where they've been promising things over the last several years, then they start jumping upside down, Madam Speaker. So let's get real. And electricity, Madam Speaker, is very important. We support any effort that extends the availability of electricity to our people in the rural communities. We fully support that, and we are saying that it has to be done systematically and at an appropriate time when the government puts out a particular budget. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. We'll now move on